Hi, I'm Rebecca Behrens, and I'm the president of Willow Insurance. Another question that we get all the time is water in basements. So we're not going to talk about in this video anything to do with water coming out of pipes because that's something totally different. What we're speaking of specifically is there's water in my basement. And in this scenario, there's basically two ways that water gets into basements in general. One is from the sewer line, so that drain in the basement, or from a sump pump. In that scenario, so the water is coming up and it's coming up into that drain. A lot of times it's sewage, it stinks, or there's been a power failure and the sump pump failed, and so now it hasn't pumped the water out of your basement. If you have a homeowner's policy that has the endorsement that is a water and sewer backup or sump pump coverage, then in general, it will have coverage up to the limit of the policy, and oftentimes there's a deductible. So many times, in the event that there is that endorsement, it's usually about a $5,000 limit. You can go far higher than that. Typically, there's a $1,000 deductible. So, and that'll cover the contents. Usually there's damage to carpet and that kind of thing, and now we're just trying to rip all of that out and make it whole again. So in general, there's going to be coverage if you have that endorsement on your policy. The other way that water comes into basements, and I hate to say this, but it's not covered unless you have a specific flood policy, is that the water has seeped through the walls in some fashion, or maybe it's typically groundwater and it's come in through the windows. There's like an egress window, and then all of a sudden the water's seeping in at the bottom, or it's coming in through the walls or at the foundation. And in general, that isn't covered because they're going to consider that either a maintenance issue where you have a crack in the foundation, or it's a flood. And for a flood, you need a flood policy. That's usually controlled by FEMA, and in general, flood policies do not respond to contents stored in basements. So if you have a flood situation and now you have contents in your basement, the contents have been damaged, it's very specific as to whether or not it's going to cover it. And in general, there isn't coverage. And I will say, you probably know if you have a flood policy, somebody made you get a flood policy, or you had some concern and that's why you have a flood policy. But no, most of the time, homeowners don't actually have flood policies. They may have water and sewer backup, which is only going to cover it if it comes in through the drain or something to do with a sump pump. But anything that's seeping into the walls is not going to probably be covered. So Rebecca Behrens, Willow Insurance.